Well, I will start, Cynthia. I introduced your films to the students as essay films. Could you
Hmm.
talk about what an essay film means to you?
Um, I think it has something to do with a free wheeling, it has to do with a certain kind of freedom. But actually, there's a very interesting essay written about film as an essay form by somebody I know in New York. He's a great writer and an essay writer himself and collector of essays. And it has something to do with um, uh, that you have something you want to answer. You're addressing a subject, or there's a subject that poses a question, and your attention is on answering that question or following a road towards that question. But the road is very, open, and you can take detours and you can take on ideas that enter while you're on the road. And I find it a very exciting and yeah, and a very rich way of making films. And in a way, I think all my films are like that. But open to taking things on board along the way. But I think those two films were very much essayist in their yeah, that we were the we had the wall as the line, or the non-existent wall as the line, and we started at a certain point and we had to reach that point at the end. And I did a lot of research. I bicycled round and round and round in the preparation time. And so I set up, because I had to make a selection, right? I had to, out of these 160 kilometers, I had to choose a certain amount of locations that could be shot within a certain time, practically speaking, but also which gave an impression of the whole somehow, in little details in each. When you put it all together, it gave some impression of that that wall line, and what it meant in 1988 and what it meant in 2009. And but obviously we took on all sorts of things along the way, things that we found along the way. um, and and that's always it's so much more interesting than just having a script and then filming one to one, because there's more life energy in it, I think.
Does that mean that there's a lot to edit at the end?
Yeah, I mean well, in the case of the bicycle films, not really, because both films were shot on film, not on video. So we were also had a cost question played a role there, but it was chronological, so you just followed that. In the case of A House in Berlin, it was a lot, yeah, a lot to edit, and it was could be the same with Fiji, but we'll see.
A House in Berlin is another film that's available to see. Is it also on Prime, Cynthia?
No, I've never actually. I'm the producer, and I had some requests at some point from, like, Rotterdam. They were putting together a sort of channel with films that they had shown at the festival, and I never really followed up on it. And I've got to do something with it, because I love
Yeah,
the film. I think it's
it is
important.
an excellent film, and if you would want to set up a screening with me, Cynthia, we could do that. It is a full feature-length film, um, and gives incredible insights about um, the return of property to the pre-World War II rightful owners, and it's a a really rich story, and I've not seen a film about that very important topic on screen before. So that said, House in Berlin, put that in your notes, look for it. And let's go back to Cycling the Frame and the Invisible Frame. Cynthia and I were talking, and ladies, I'd love for you to open up your mics, especially for this. We noticed that most of your questions were about cycling the frame. And we are curious about why, as opposed to the invisible frame. I'm going to call on you. Let's see here.
Yeah, was it because it was more, yeah, what struck you
Rachel,
more?
Rachel, why don't you start?
For me, why I chose to do a question on cycling the frame was because I think I had just done the recollector thing, so it was more fresh in my mind than the invisible frame was.
Okay,
Ah,
that's, yeah.
aha, aha. So the Recollector, Cynthia, is a very short survey I send out 2 weeks after
Mhm.
the screening of the film, so
Mhm.
that it reintroduces the memory of the film
Yeah, okay.
and reinforces the memory of the film. And so they had done that, and we showed the invisible frame about 2 weeks after. So you haven't done your Recollector, or have you done your Recollector? I believe I just sent it to you. Have you done your Recollector for the invisible frame yet? Not yet. Kate, I
I
don't think
can't
so.
remember. I posted the post-analysis form for the invisible frame. I can't, I'm mixing up my days, but I don't think I gave the recollector to them yet. And I have a sneaking suspicion that their questions are all linked to cycling the frame too, because I posted the link to the YouTube video so they could actually reference it in
Okay.
real time
Ah.
and go and choose specific frames too. So I think that might have had something to do with it too.
Okay. Good.
Okay,
We were just
fresher in mind, fresher in mind. Okay, good. Well, let's, Dana, please go ahead. You have your hand up.
Also, too, I think I kind of connected more with the cycling the frame. Like, I kind of understood it better than I forgot what the other one was called, but the second one. So I looked more
The
in,
invisible frame.
yeah, the invisible frame. I looked more
Mhm.
into the cycling the frame.
Why did you connect with it more?
I just felt it had like a deeper meaning to me with when she was going around like the Berlin Wall, and kind of the things that she said within cycling the frame stood out to me more as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask you 5 whys. Why? Why do you think those? Why did they stand out?
I think, I'm not sure, but everything that like was being said, like tied with the scenes that were with it, kind of just like made sense to me. Like in
Mm.
words that she was saying when she was like looking at the water, and when she was like riding her bicycle, and then when they were showing the scenes of like the buildings and the grass and like spinning wheels.
And did those scenes, when you saw the invisible scene frame, did those scenes connect with for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else, let's talk about connecting the scenes from cycling the frames to the invisible frame. Nina, can you talk about? Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I noticed was I think it was the end of both films was when they ended at like in the same location. I don't remember the location, like what
The
landmark it was,
Brandenburg
but
Gate.
yes, and it was Miss Tilda Swinton with her bike in front of, yeah, and because it ended in the same landmark, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It kind of like brought everything together full circle. So I think that was probably what stood out to me the most. for
Mm.
both films.
That you connected with the water as well. That was one of the places that really connected to me as identical, right? And we got to measure what was before. What about that scene? What was different? What was starkly different? Peyton, talk about those two scenes in Cycling the Frame and The Invisible Frame, where Tilda cycled to a pond or lake, small lake, kleine See, you'd say in German.
So the little lake with the fish, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah. I think. Are you there, Peyton?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. What scene you mean? Like, what scene are you
Um,
talking?
where Tilda stops by a lake and walks to the water and talks to the fish. She puts her hand in the water.
Oh, okay. Well, for that scene, I definitely like that scene because it sort of reminded me of myself. Because I, just as a connection, because I love animals and I like making that connection more personal than just seeing it happen from someone else. Making it personal like helped me connect to the film also.
Yeah, nice. Scarlett, were there two scenes that you connected to in the two films, that they were similar in the two films, or that were the same scenes but one 20 years later?
I don't know if it's this like the same scene, but just like the ones where Tilda's like biking on the street and it like and like they're like zooming out and you could just see her like riding straight through to that what's that like thing, that structure that's in both of the films?
Oh, in the Brandenburg Gate again. You mean at the end?
Yeah.
Those two, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because in
Cynthia,
the in the first film, she's standing in front of this wall, and in the second, she's going through the Brandenburg Gate from the west side to the former east side. So it's also a very powerful, um, yeah, statement in a way too, but
yeah,
also the
Cynthia, talk
physical
more.
act of crossing. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So talk more about this, the Brandenburg Gate and what it looked like in 1988. Well, we saw what it looked like and what it looked like in 2009. But talk more about the meaning of the Brandenburg Gate, both in German history as well as for your films.
Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible story. The whole story of the Brandenburg Gate. I mean, starting with Napoleon, I think, and you know, this military. Berlin was really built up. This is why there are these huge wide streets. It was a sort of military garrison, and you know, for marching and even before the Nazis. And then, of course, the Nazis used the Brandenburg Gate as one of their theatrical backdrops. And and then, of course, it was this incredibly symbolic division. But it wasn't just that. So the Brandenburg Gate was here, and the German Parliament is just, you know, you see it in the second film from the back. You don't really see it, but I lived just not very far from there at the Potsdamer Platz, which was basically a huge ruined area. And so there was the wall. I lived in an old factory, and there were still enormous ruins still standing in the mid 70s, which some of which were torn down. And so I lived in this very bizarre place, and I used to bike along the wall and go to the Reichstag, which was the parliament, is the parliament again. And it was just this, and I always found it this extraordinarily ironic place to be, because it was, you know, the wall was behind it. It was covered in bullet wounds and, you know, blackened. And above it, above the main portals, it said, "The German people," you know, and the wall was behind it. So it was this very bizarre. And I kind of, you know, this was something that I did a lot when I was living in Berlin. I lived in this extraordinary kind of landscape, which incorporated so much of the destruction of Berlin. So that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of heading towards one of the questions somebody asked about my personal, the personal reasons for making the film. But if I could carry on from there just for a minute, I mean, the thing was that when I first rode around the wall, the whole 160 kilometers, it was an extraordinary experience, because I also understood what it means, what it actually physically means to be enclosed. And that was a very tough thing for a lot of people. I mean, it was much more difficult psychologically than people really spoke about or knew or understood. It was also understanding that I was in half of this city, right? So, but my half of the city was the outskirts were cut off so that I couldn't carry on. I mean, I couldn't go in one part of the countryside, I couldn't go into the other part of the countryside, and I could look over the wall and see what's on the other side and understand that it was sort of like, yeah, as Tilda says, you know, you're, you know, truncated, but also a certain amount, a certain kind of history which is being stopped in its tracks. You know, a city can no longer grow organically out. And so, and I think a lot of Berliners said to me after seeing the film, "Oh my God, I never realized that Berlin, West Berlin was like that," because they'd never really been to these skirts. So it was, I think it was a revelation for Berliners too.
Yeah. Dana has a question.
Yeah.
Great, Dana. Come on.
Much as a question, but just to like add, I liked how in the invisible frame, she talks about how there was a divide even though the wall was down. And I felt like that connects to now, because today we're really divided, even though there's not like a physical wall in between us. So I felt like that was a good representation.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. And I think for me, it's still very interesting. It's still present, and there's still very strong divides between the East and the West, and people in the East. And actually today, I just got a bank statement saying, "You will be pleased to know that the solidarity Zuschlag, what's Zuschlag? So I'm losing my English. The solidarity payment ends this year. So from 1990 till now, West Germans have been paying a percentage of their salaries or earnings as solidarity to the East. And the bank just assumed that I would be happy that I no longer have to pay that. Well, actually, they're wrong, but whatever. But I think it's also because I grew up in Jamaica and Fiji, and my mother's American. So I used to spend quite a bit of time in America. And I always assumed that Fiji was my home, and that was the way we live that we, this very tiny white minority, that was kind of a very normal thing. And I sort of naively, as a child, always assumed America was the same way. And you can imagine my horror as a sort of, in the sort of 1920, when I was around 1920, or I spent more time as a sort of young adult in America, that I realized how racist America was. And I mean, deeply racist. And I'm talking about like late 60s. I understood that. And because it was, so divides have always been a subject for me, divisions and divides, and seeing things from different perspectives, and not really feeling in any way, I mean, you could say my heart is in Fiji because I've spent so much time there in the last 20 or 30 years, but also in Jamaica. And Europe is not really so I see Europe as a sort of as an outsider, and Berlin, of course, as an outsider, because I was also not. So I saw Berlin and approached these films as somebody from the outside, which could be criticized, I guess, by some Germans, but whatever.
I would say that too. So it's almost like Berlin is your laboratory, your place to work, but Fiji is home. So then how is it now working in Fiji as home? That's an interesting thought. Are you as objective?
Well, of course, I mean, it's only home for me in a way. I mean, I have lots of friends there, and I have some friends I grew up with, but obviously I'm not Fijian. And so there's also this ambiguity there as there is here. And my film is in a way approaching that, you know, how close can you get? I didn't really ever want to be that close to Germany. In fact, I had very strong, what do you call it? Not sort of taking myself back, not wanting to ever be German or whatever. Now I've got a German passport because of Brexit, because, you know, which is crazy, but it was only last year that I actually got a German passport, because I always had this very strong sense of the Nazi era, basically. And it preoccupied me a lot. But in Fiji, I just feel completely at home, completely relaxed, completely in my skin. But of course, you know, Fijians don't think of me as being Fijian, so.
There were some questions. Thank you for that, and a long conversation about feeling at home where you are, and that's maybe another time we could talk more about that. There were some questions about Tilda Swinton. Who had that question? Was that who had this? It was Rachel. Rachel, there you are. Rachel, ask your question about Tilda Swinton, if you would, please.
So my question is, why did you choose Tilda Swinton to be the lead actress in your film? And what was the process for casting?
What was the process
For
of,
casting.
I'm not getting the last word.
What was
For
the process
casting.
for casting her?
Oh, okay, casting, sorry. It just sort of broke up. Well, actually, Tilda and I had met some years previously because Derek Jarman was a friend of mine. And when he showed the film Caravaggio, I don't know if you've seen it, but that was the first big film that Tilda was in. So they came to Berlin, and I met her with Derek, and we became friends pretty quickly. And And then I suggested her for a film that a friend of mine was shooting, and an experimental film, partly in Fiji. And we all went to Fiji together, and then we spent time there together. And it was really interesting to see Tilda in this, in Fiji, and she was just very, very at home as well, and very, you know, I've experienced people who are very kind of, I don't know, they just don't fit in very well. So it was interesting to be there. And we started working together on this idea that I was already formulating of this Heart of Light film. It started so long ago. And then I was asked to do this film for TV, and I suggested this wall film. And I suggested that I have a protagonist who rides a bicycle around the wall. And I suggested Tilda. I asked Tilda if she'd like to do it. She said, of course. And so it was just like that, really. And wasn't really casting. It was just that, you know, I thought, because she's such an original voice and spirit, and we have this kind of ongoing conversation about the world and everything. And I just thought it would be really interesting to have somebody whose responses would be interesting, rather than just somebody on a bicycle, you know, and that I could count on her bringing a certain, spirit to the film. But of course, you know, she has a screen presence. So that is, you know, that is a determining factor. You know, otherwise I could have just got somebody to do it, and it wouldn't have been as, you know, her presence obviously brings something to the film, but it's also her mind, her meanderings, her thoughts, her feelings that she brings, which are so interesting, which I personally find very exciting, illuminating, and interesting. It's like an ongoing conversation, which we've partly filmed in that film, partly filmed in The Invisible Frame, and we continue it. It's continuing, and she will also be part of the Fiji film. And although Fiji is the main character, and the Fijian people are the main characters in the film, and she's not the central character, but because that's I couldn't make a film in Fiji but anyway, she's the central character together with the wall, and the wall defined, you know, that not just the wall, the middle of the lake. Those were the defining line with Tilda in the Cycling the Frame. And in The Invisible Frame, it changed. I mean, the conversation continued with Tilda, but what we wanted to do was kind of physically, mentally weave the city together. So, you know, so she's on both sides of the wall, and the bicycle crosses from one side to the other. And sometimes we're in places which we only saw from the one side, we looking over the wall. In the second film, we're in those places, and that was extremely interesting and powerful. And yeah.
Cynthia, can you talk about any anticipation in 1988 when you shot about the wall coming down? And I expect that you didn't know that you would do a second film. So could you talk about that, if you had any anticipation?
I mean, I did imagine, I mean, I can remember very clearly riding along a piece of the wall and imagining in my head, when I was doing the preparation, I sort of would dream up these, you know, go into these sort of fantasies about the wall coming down. And it was just an amazing sort of, you know, it's just the way your mind can envisage something like that. but so the wall goes down and there's tremendous, excitement and people are, and then it always stopped because I couldn't imagine how it would continue. I mean, the very thought it wasn't as if I foresaw it. It was just, a sort of my imagination. And the reason that it stopped was because what always came in was the realization that they had been separated for so long. And I had sometimes gone across to East Berlin, and that people had been, a whole generation was being educated on both sides to sort of in their particular political system, and that they thought quite differently about one another, and were being encouraged to sort of see the other as the potential enemy or whatever, and very, very, very different economic realities. And so I couldn't imagine how that would ever really, how that would then resolve itself if they came together. But the strange thing is that, the wall came down 1 year later, and Tilda does seem to be invoking the fall of the wall in some of the texts, and, and then finding this little sticker on the wall where she just puts her hand, you see her from behind, she's just stroking this little sticker on the wall, which says, Berlin will be wall free. And then she's, she's walking along this, on this kind of hilltop where you can see the wall sort of vaguely in the distance. You can see it kind of doing a big corner and then carrying on into the distance. And she's saying, oh wall, if you would fall and people could over you step and go about your business. And I mean, in retrospect, it seemed very strange that she was actually speaking these texts, which, which seemed to be almost like invocations of the fall of the wall. Yeah, but no, totally shocking moment when somebody called me from London and said, we're looking at TV and it says the wall is opened up. And I was like, what? So I had to run out of the house and run down to the wall to see what was going on. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was the most extraordinary, powerful, just to see people from the East flooding through this wall and just getting to the other side with these looks of total disbelief on their faces. And nobody could imagine it. It was extraordinary. Everybody crying and clapping, and it was just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so I wanted to make the second film even before, 10 years before, but I couldn't get the money. And also Tilda had sort of babies, and then suddenly it came together in 2009, just very quickly. And so we prepared it and shot it. I was lucky, I had a great producer, and just it all came together, and we shot it within a very short period of time, and it had to be prepared for the 25th anniversary of the fall of the wall, so it was going to be shown on television and stuff like that. So we had to move.
Yeah, good. Talk a little bit more about the text. You say that it comes from an ongoing conversation, but then what's the process? And do you pick from your conversations? Are you keeping journals? How are you doing it? How are you choosing the text?
It's very simple. We on both occasions, on the first, we just lay on the floor late at night with Simon Fisher Turner, who did the soundtrack, the music soundtrack, and for both films, and created this wall sound, as we call it. And we talked about the things that we had seen and done, and I mean the conversation had been going on the whole time, but we tried to put points together, and then we taped Tilda's thoughts and things she said. All of that was tape the last night for both films. In the second film, we went to a sound studio and created an all-night situation where we did very much the same, but it was basically her thoughts and reading these, speaking these poems that she brought with her.
Uh-huh.
These two poems that she'd actually introduced, she brought with her. And then during the editing, I had to find the space for those texts. I mean, we thought about, I mean, like some of them, they were kind of, we were thinking about particular scenes that we'd shot and thinking about texts that related, or Tilda's thoughts that related to that particular situation. So she's very much a part of the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's sort of part of the essay style of film. Would that be correct?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you don't really know what's going to come out of it until the very end. And yeah. But I mean, the other thing about an essay film, I think it has a lot to do with serendipity, if you are interested in that. And it has to do with calling on things that, you know, you're very, very, very concentrated on one particular subject. And then all this stuff keeps coming at you that is related to that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to other filmmakers about that who are conscious of that. And yeah, I call them unexpected gifts, but yeah, in a way, you know, you could say serendipity. Like why are we shooting in a particular place where these boys are on their whatever those mountain bikes, you know, sort of flying over these little hills, and we asked if we could film them, and then we found this little boy, this little archer, the little boy who was shooting bows, you know, with his bow and arrow. And we asked him, and then we sent him with a note to his parents when he went home saying, "We hope that it's all right. Please contact us. We've filmed your son with Tilda Swinton." And so he came, it was all okay. And he came to the premiere and, you know, things like that. But there were so many things that happened along the way that sort of determined because also when I went around these many times, there were always different people there. There were different people, you know, who were, you know, walking along the walls. So you never quite knew what you were going to find. If you went to a certain location where you planned to shoot. Yeah.
We'll talk about. Is there anyone here? Pardon me, there we are. For Academy students and others who have planned a production like this, where you have collaborators and you plan a day and you choose a space, or can anyone here speak to that? Maybe Rachel, I know you do some editing with your friends. Are you helping them write? Do you choose a place? Let's talk about choosing places that speak back to you. Anyone there? What about, and let's speak to the serendipity, or Cynthia, you and I have spoken about the magic that happens when you're making a film. How can, and when we're asking for funding, how can we explain to the funders that this serendipity happens, right? The serendipity happens. So we have to go there and then allow for the things to happen to us. So there's, that is, we might be able to find a measure for that, Cynthia.
Actually, there would be an interesting idea, Katie, because I don't think it only applies to film. I think it applies to all sorts of business ventures, or, ideas that people have that have
Sure.
nobody has done before, and it's like the skepticism is enormous because they say, yeah, but it's always been done that way. But in terms of filmmaking, it's always about conventional expectations of a story, of beginning, middle, and end, and conflict. There always has to be conflict of some sort. And in most American cinemas, it's got to have a happy ending. I can't tell you how many filmmakers have been forced to change the endings of their films to make them happy. And I mean, Europeans have a different, or did, they're very, I mean, most German filmmakers now tend to kind of want to be successful and make kind of American style films, but certainly French cinema and Italian cinema. I mean, I always loved the kind of neorealism and, just telling stories in a different way. But I mean, I've had experiences where they say with the Fiji film recently, yes, but we're not quite sure where it's going. There's so much, there's so many different things happening. How does it hold together? Will the audience be able to follow? Well, I mean, I give enormous credit to audiences. I think audiences are much smarter than they're given credit for. And yeah, I mean, of course, if you see films all your life that have, had these conventional structures, you do have certain expectations. That's why I think it's very interesting to see experimental films, and I think everybody should show them in colleges, and because they just kind of open your mind up to open the brain up, you could say, to another way of perception, perceiving the world, or light, or color, or any of those things. And it's quite liberating, I think.
You think of Chris Marker films, for instance, and French films from French New Wave. Those are some experimental films that are accepted, aren't they? Godard film, accepted experimental films. Sure. That I have also know a festival director who is also a film director, and he says every film is experimental, and if we take the experimentation out of it, then what's the purpose? Right. And this is a question for Catherine Haley. She's a different kind of artist, and talk about the serendipity that you expect, but you don't know what it is in your work.
I have a bad connection. Can you type that in the chat?
Oh, sure.
If you can hear me, I can hear you well now. You can talk. But
okay, you can talk about the expectation of serendipity in your work. You're an olfactory artist, and you go into the lab, and what happens?
Well, a lot of my practice is very visual, and I also write a lot, which is all very intentional and specific, and you see it, you write it, you build it, and working in olfactory is all about serendipity because it's invisible, and even though you know what the materials are to a degree, there's this element of chance that doesn't happen as much in the other senses, and it's really exciting because it really, like you're talking about an experimental film, kind of moving your perspective or opening it or changing it. The scent work that I do does that, and it actually helps with my other work too when I use that. So it's kind of like a muscle. that you use. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
more chance than any of the other mediums that I use.
Yeah, the word muscle is great, I think. It's very, you're actually exercising a muscle, and which at a certain point helps you to see the world differently, and visually changes your perceptions, and especially, I mean, looking at art too. I mean, reading.
Exactly. That engages all of your senses, even though you are only using visual, perhaps.
Mhm.
And well, they also watched "What does your film taste like?" Right? And we asked, "What does your film taste like?" Cynthia, the cycling the frame and the invisible frame. If you could assign a taste to them and a scent, what would they be? And maybe we'll ask Catherine the same question after Cynthia answers.
Huh. Tastes like. Well, there was definitely a bitter taste to cycling the frame.
Hmm.
And yeah, the invisible frame was a more joyous, but I don't know what taste I would assign to it. Not sweet. Sweet would be superficial, something. I don't know. No idea.
Maybe ascribe fresh oranges or something like this, or a fresh
Possibly.
bus cup apple crispy. Yeah. Any of our students want to ascribe a taste to Cynthia's films? Nina.
Well, I think this is really just my opinion, but I thought it was kind of like a bittersweet taste. I mean, I think it's kind of more of a combination of bitter and sweet. I think there were definitely like factors, and I think more specifically the invisible frame, where there were joyous factors and there were not so joyous factors. Um, but yeah, I think bittersweet for me. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably, in both films, it's probably absolutely true. Because it was very sad. I mean, it was extremely sad, even the second film. And sort of the loss, the loss, why, sort of the waste of life and opportunities, and the stupidity of walls, and, creating barriers and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine, what sense of smell did you come up with?
I have not been able to watch yet.
Oh,
so
sorry.
I would love to. No. But as the words are going around, it sounds like I would go towards something fermenting or decay, some things that's decaying, but I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. So I'll just, after I see, I'll have a better.
Good. Then tell us. Good. We
There
have
were some other questions, weren't there?
Yes. Ladies in the Humanities Academy, get your questions out. Nina, please. Go ahead, Nina.
I think my can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So one of my questions was, in both films, Miss Tilda Swinton is seen and heard speaking German and saying German phrases and words. So had you known how to speak German prior to doing the films, or did she have to learn? And if she did have to learn, what was that experience like for her?
Actually, I think Tilda was actually born in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, or lived in Germany. Maybe she just lived in. Her father was a military person, so she lived in Germany for a while as a child. Her father was maybe stationed here or something like that, and she sort of knew German words. I mean, she came to Berlin quite often during those, but I think certainly she hadn't been here that much by 1988. I think she can, she can basically learn. She has the ability to learn sentences in German. I think some of them she just learnt off by heart. But it was quite funny, there's the thing where she enters the barracks and there's this man in a kilt.
Yes.
Because I went there and when I was doing the preparation, and I saw the barracks and so I thought, oh, this would be interesting because of the military connection to Tilda. It was, the Scottish were in there at the time. And so I went in and I mentioned her father's name, and they of course they knew about him because he was very important general or colonel or something like that. So they put on that whole sort of thing for us when it was like they organized the I told them when we were coming, and then they put on the bagpipe player.
Oh, wow.
Great, yeah.
We went because that's the British sector, right?
Yeah, that was in the British. Yeah, I don't know if you all, I mean, the students understood that Berlin was separated into these 4 parts. So the Russian zone, the American zone, and the British, and the French. So basically, Germans had no real say here. And there was an extraordinary incident once. It was hard for me to actually understand, that Germans couldn't do or say certain things in Berlin whatsoever. And certain people weren't even allowed to come here from West Germany. During the film festival, there was a very important Russian director here and we were all invited to one of these big parties, and it was going to be in the German president's Berlin residence. But somehow they were saying, no, the Russian is not allowed to go there. And because, there was this, so we said, we're going to go with him anyway. And apparently there was a lot of telephoning going back and forth, and the Gregors, who Katie knows, who ran the forum, very famous couple who ran the forum, they were sort of preparing the Weizsäcker, who was and his wife, who was the German president, that this Russian is coming, because this was it was 1 year before the wall came down, and there was obviously, it wasn't that we were expecting the wall to come down, it was just that there was a lot of stuff going on in Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and people, pushing at the borders everywhere, and a lot of, these demonstrations, these amazing demonstrations in East Germany and Leipzig, and so we brought him there, and it was, it was an act of defiance in a way, because he wasn't allowed to be there and under the regulations of the, So anyway, so there were all sorts of weird things, but basically we were, those areas of Berlin were controlled by the different allies. And even Tempelhof, which was an airport at that time, and I went with Joan Jonas, who's an American artist. She was doing a piece here, and we went into the control tower because the Americans controlled the airport, and we went into the control tower, and they showed us the flight paths that only Berlin planes were allowed to fly on these paths over East Germany. And things like that. I mean, it was all very, very strange. So it was like it was a very weird place to be. And that's what was exciting about it, of course. Um, and we were very privileged, you know, because there was Berlin was supported, was subsidized completely, and we could go anywhere and do museums or, you know, concerts or whatever. There was no, everything was cheap, living was cheap, and you could, there were never any queues, or there was very, you know, it was like a very sort of, you know, and when the wall came down, of course, it was suddenly like, oh my God, you know, there are all these people coming into West Berlin, and now everything's going to be shared.
Mm.
And of course, when the excitement kind of wore off, there were a lot of people who didn't like this idea at all.
Right.
Or paying this solidarity payment every month, which is why the bank wrote to me and said, you'll be happy to know. Because
Yeah.
basically West Germans have been supporting the East all these years. It's a long time.
Yeah, well, that's another, I think,
Sure.
it's another story, and it's another thing to look at when we're considering reparations in the United States. Germany has paid a lot of reparations, and it's a good model for us to look at. And Cynthia, you have generously given us an hour, and it is unusual for Screen 360 TV to have an entire hour with a filmmaker. So we thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, do we still have a gentleman on? I don't think we do. I think we lost our gentleman, so I will say ladies. Can you, if you would please, show Cynthia your faces and your gratitude?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming and speaking with us.
Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't hear more from you students, because actually I was very curious about your Scarlett, who I haven't seen yet. Maybe she's not there. I just see Scarlett Humanities. But no, I was curious about you guys too. And thank you for your interest, and thank you for watching the films.
And if you do have, there's Scarlett. Thank you, Scarlett.
Scarlett, hi.
There you are. Oh, Mariella has a quick question. How much how much time do we have, Kate? Or if the students need to go to class?
No, that's okay. It's the last class of the day, and they have 7 more minutes here. So ask away,
okay.
Mariella.
Thank you. And
Okay,
Cynthia, how's your time? Are you all right there?
I'm fine. I'm absolutely
Okay, please, Mariella.
I was as I watch both films, I was all the time thinking about a concept, because apart from being an educator, I'm also a translator, so I'm all the time thinking about concepts and words. And I wanted to ask Cynthia whether she thought in her films, and especially in the second one, about the concept. Pardon my German. Fernweh, is it? Fernweh? You know that word in
Fernweh.
German? Which, yeah,
Fernweh.
okay, that one. Sorry.
Yes.
Because it's a concept that cannot be translated to other languages, as far as I know. And I don't know if you want to explain it, or shall I, for the audience?
Yeah, it's a beautiful word, actually. I mean, I'm very interested in all these concepts of not being where you can't translate from one language to another.
You cannot. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist. It exists only in German. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's I mean, basically it means a nostalgic kind of longing for a place. It could be for more than a place, or could even be for an idea, or yeah, but it has something slightly less nostalgic and more longing, I think, because Fernweh actually means far hurt, the hurt for something far, or the pain for something far. That's what it basically.
Yeah, I saw this concept with my students when we read a novel by Michael Frayn that is also, I mean, set in the context. It has some references to Germany and the war, and the protagonist is the one who's got this feeling of missing a place or a moment, a time
Mm,
that then by the end, I don't want to spoil the novel, but then at the end we realize that he has never been there. So
mm,
Mm.
it's a
okay.
strange feeling. And even some travelers say that they've got this kind of feeling of missing a place where you actually have never been, but you want to go. It's
Mhm.
like a prospective feeling you've
Oh
got
yeah, yeah.
as
So it's not
well.
just
So
in
it,
the
it
past.
goes both ways. And I was thinking at the very beginning when you said that there was this sort of curiosity about places that they have never been to because they were not allowed. So
Mhm.
whether it could be connected to this concept, this German concept.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but it's an
Okay.
interesting, yeah, it's an interesting idea. Yeah, yeah, there are so many different emotions and feelings and yeah, that involved making those films, those two films, for sure. And yeah, critical. But I mean, I also didn't want to address things too directly
Mm.
because sometimes I think, because as I say, I think, you know, young people, you know, middle-aged people, old people are much smarter than they're given credit for, and that it's, I'm more interested in the conversation with them, you
Yes.
know, and giving them space or allowing space and not sort of dictating what to think about something or what to feel. So they're having their own conversation. They're going on their own journey when they see my films, not just the
Mm.
bicycle films, but
Dana.
Dana.
Is that why you chose to add less of, like, not a lot of lines? Because I noticed that there's more scenery than of people actually talking.
Yeah, I noticed that question, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, it's partly because I wanted to give space to the flow within, you know, that you're not just crowding, you know, and commenting on too many things, because you have to be able to see things and then connect them to what has been said and what is going to be said, without, you know, yeah, it's about leaving space, but also because there was so much. So right, so you've got Berlin. Well, you've got West Berlin, and then you've got the whole of East Germany, plus East Berlin. So basically, the central part of the city that was divided was only a small part. And all of this bit where the wall went was the outskirts of the city. So that's why there was so much landscape. Yeah, if I'd cut in, you know, we would have got back to the city. But, and I think you see that in the second film very clearly when Tilda's coming towards back into the city, and you see the TV tower in the distance, and
Mhm.
she's going along this very long road, and it's sort of like, oh, we're now coming, and we really have this sense, oh my God, we're leaving this countryside behind, which had been actually really beautiful shooting there. You know, we'd been very happy in the country in the outskirts. And now we were coming back to the city, and it was sort of like, oh, and then everything was so noisy again, and no,
Mm.
and it was, yeah. So there you go.
I have a question for the students. in this time, so it's been a month since you've seen Cycling the Frame, I believe. And so in your day to day, have any images from either one of the films just sort of floated into your mind? Maybe where you were walking at some point. Nina.
I think this was in the Invisible Frame when Miss Tilda was like, I think it was like a crossroads type of thing. It was a dirt path, and
Oh yeah.
there was a little boy playing, and she was looking at a map, I think, and she was kind of like looking from one path to the other, and then out into the nature. And I think that's one of the scenes that kind of been floating in my mind ever since I watched it. I'm not really sure why, but I think the scenery has to do with it. I think because I really loved. I think one of my favorite things about the film was the beautiful scenery, and something about the way she was looking on the dirt path and the little boy playing seemed kind of familiar. I'm not really sure why again, but something about it seemed very nostalgic. I've lived on the outskirts of the city before, so I think maybe that's why. But I'm still trying to find the answer to that. So.
Anyone else? There's a scene that keeps coming back to me. It was from Cycling the Frame, where we're along the path and it's bucolic nature, and then we come across a fenced off area and a sign saying this is a danger zone from World War II, and it looks like basically they were digging up undetonated bombs there. That's so it and Tilda says, "Oh, how stupid," or "stupid people." She says, "Stupid people." Tell us a little bit more about that scene and why you put it in.
Well, that was just they were digging up that area at just at the time. It was right on the corner of the Potsdamer Platz, and they there was all that. I don't know what happened, but somehow Tilda didn't like saying that. That was something I asked her to say, and it was a mistake. Because Tilda doesn't like to say stuff like that. Stupid.
Stupid.
And it had to do. It was actually it was a mistake because it was a wrong reference, because you didn't really know how to refer it to anything, and it could have been the bombs that were being excavated, or all these tourists looking over the wall, or it could, but it was that's the only thing that I think if Tilda and I sat and watched the film together again, she would kind of go like sort of she would be irritated at that point.
Oh wow.
So interesting that you for me, one of the most important kind of contrasts in the two films are the ones where, when she's riding through the forest and she's singing the Teddy Bear Picnic song. And then she's sitting down on these rocks and she's looking across the lake and looking at the houses on the other side. And it's basically the wall divides the lake, and she's saying, oh, these people who live there, and, they can't go swimming on a hot summer's day and stuff like that. And then in the second film, that exact point opposite her is where she's now being blocked by people putting their fences up along the bike path, and she can't go further. She has to. So these new rich people, a lot of kind of corporate who've taken over these villa areas, and there was a lot of grabbing after the wall came down, like all this property that could be, grabbed. So they've basically been, they want to have their gardens going right down to the water, and they don't want any bicyclists going past. And recently I was actually paddleboarding on that lake, and I suddenly realized I was in between that one scene and the scene 20 years before. And it's now 20 years ago that I made, obviously. No, 10.
Yeah.
2009, 2010.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of strange moment. Like I suddenly felt like, oh my God, this is like the past and the past and the past, you know.
And you're on that narrow denkmal of two
Yeah,
bricks
I was in the middle of the lake.
in
Yeah.
the middle of the lake. In the middle of the lake. Who remembers the word that Tilda was using to describe the animals and the rich people taking up the land that Cynthia just references? Nina, you remember?
My German was very bad. Pronunciation is bad. It's a bit Freisen, I think.
Close, close. Bella's studying German. What do animals do when they greedily eat food?
Oh my goodness, I have no clue.
It's very close to what Nina said.
Freisenly?
Fressen.
Fressenly?
Fressenly?
So you're making an adjective from it. So I think that would be correct. Fressenly. But fressen is a verb, right? To gobble up. To gobble up, right? Right. We talked about that word and how you used it in the film, referencing its true meaning and then its other meaning when people do it.
Mm.
Yeah, that was really nice. We talked about your poetry in the film, Cynthia. So that was actually collaborative poetry. Dana, you're nodding your head. Tell us about some more of the text that that touched you or that you might have had bubble up again.
The part where she was saying like it wasn't just the wall. I don't remember what it actually said, but she went to say that the wall divided us, and she said not just by land, and then she started going on by saying the people and like the more important aspects that really divided them, rather than just land.
Yeah. That's the real poetry of Tilda. I mean, I think it's really important. I don't know how many other films you've seen with her, but she is, you know, she does bring a very poetic soul to her work, and I'm so looking forward to the Fiji film because that's you know this kind of collaboration is just a wonderful thing, yeah, I mean the films would be poorer without her for sure, and poorer with the. And I also think that you know it's maybe not quite clear what Simon Fisher Turner did, but he rode with us quite often on taping sound, but he also went off by himself something, and so all the sound is coming from the walls, from those areas. Mm-hmm. Along the wall in both films. And yeah.
We talked about that. And you all recognized some sounds. Just some of them come to you? Some of the sounds that you heard when we saw an image of the wall on screen. And they were action. And that was the sound design, which we did remark about. For instance, dogs.
Yeah, dogs.
Dogs.
Yeah. Barking. Yeah.
People saying hello over the top. Just, as if they're hoping for some life to return the greeting and respond. Right.
Yeah, helicopters too. Yeah.
Helicopters. Walking on broken glass. Another one, right? And that was near an empty factory with broken windows. We can imagine that you had walked inside, or he had walked inside and captured that. Yeah, no, that was definitely profound for me. Yeah. Good. Well, it is 10:20 now. And Cynthia, is there anything that you, we do have an assignment, but I want to ask Cynthia if she would like to leave the ladies with something to think about. And if you'd like, you can respond to me and I'll pass it on to Cynthia.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the last words of Tilda in the second film, but also what Dana just mentioned, where she's talking about the separation, how profound these walls divide people, and just, you know, the walls in our minds and the walls in society and the walls in, you know, upbringing and religion and these endless sort of separation.
Mm.
But that I think, you know, Tilda saying open minds, open hearts, open are really, really, you know, that's what we try to do. And yeah, be open. And yeah, and I must say that the dedication in the film is to the people of Palestine. So of course it means I want that wall to go, you know, because it's politically wrong as well. But it also refers, which a lot of people don't understand, it refers to a time when the people of Palestine were Jews and Arabs and Christians and Druze and all living peacefully together. They did live together peacefully, you know, before 1948. So, you know, that's it's like also a vision of hope for the future.
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So
And
lovely to meet you all, sort of. And you're all sports people, right? All of you.
that's right.
No?
We talked about
Yeah?
that.
Yeah.
We have a lacrosse player, we have 2 volleyball players. Rachel, I forget. What is your sport?
I do lacrosse and track.
Also lacrosse and track, right. And
Amazing.
Dana?
I picked up a new sport, fencing.
Aha,
Wow.
also a lacrosse
Cool.
player.
Yeah, it's great that you have this in America. I have to say, this is much stronger than in Germany. That America has really, you know, there are some extraordinary things in education, you know, that you do. Then you have humanities, or you have, you know, film, or you have, you know, all these other subjects. It's a lot more interesting, I think, colleges in that sense.
And
There's a lot more on and
how is,
crossover and.
yeah, athletic and sports. I guess in high school, did your son Marlon play soccer, for instance, football?
No, there's not that much sport here, not in the same way as it is in America.
It's inherently American to connect education with sports. And even in Canada, any sport you want to participate in is recreationally done through the community rather than the independent school. It's America has linked the two, and that's where the scholarship with sports has inherently come about through academics. And it's interesting to look at. It's got unforeseen consequences that come along with that, but it's definitely inherently American.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's very interesting. Yeah, I think East Germany had it.
Yes.
The communist countries had it.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. There was a lot of that. Well, socialism. I mean, yeah, socialism is incredibly interesting. It had that's what I will say. Final parting word, that that, you know, there was a lot of good in the communist countries, a lot of good stuff, and they were completely demonized. And nobody ever, you know, that's one reason why the East Germans feel so resentful, because the West just came in and kind of colonized them and said, everything we do is better, everything, you know, capitalism, better, better, better. And they, there were a lot of things that they lost, which were quite valuable to them. Also a more human way of going about being neighbors. I mean, there are a lot of, of course, we all know about the Stasi, the secret police, and this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of very, very interesting, positive things which they were kind of forced to give up. So yeah.
But now, to add to that,
Yeah, sorry.
Angela Merkel, president, came from the East. She was
Prime Minister, yeah.
the Prime Minister, pardon me, yes.
Chancellor, sorry, Chancellor.
Was
yeah.
raised in the East. And
Yeah.
so what kinds of things did she maintain in an influence from the East? Maintain influence of, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole long story. I
Yeah.
think it would be very interesting to know more about that. I mean, she's very ambitious. I mean, she's a scientist as well. Isn't she a
She's a
physicist?
physicist. She's a
Yeah.
physicist, yes, is her husband, I believe, right?
Yeah, and but I mean, she's the one who made the decision to let all the immigrants, nearly 1 million immigrants into Germany. So that's also very interesting.
yeah.
And that really has, there's a lot of bad stuff going on with neo-Nazis, and really there's a very dangerous right-wing kind of thing going on now in Germany.
Yeah.
And they're very resentful of all these immigrants. But a lot of these immigrants brought really great, I mean, that's how America became what it was as well.
Mhm.
I mean, a country of also of immigrants. And I'm very grateful that she offered those people refuge. And I think it's also because Germany caused, the destruction of Europe.
Yeah.
And all these people who had to flee, and somehow the Germans took responsibility in this moment for something that basically all the other countries kind of refused to do, except for Italy, which has been, and Greece up to a certain point. I mean,
Yes,
it was
sure.
forced upon them, and Italy was very, but yeah. So now
Yeah.
Trump is gone.
Oh, almost.
I mean, you can't imagine. We've been all in Europe. We've been in a state of absolute nightmare for 4 years, not just you. I mean, I can't tell you. It's like, so almost, let's hope he doesn't do anything more destructive on his way out. And I just hope that somehow America is going to resurface in the best possible way.
It feels like it. It feels like good is prevailing and progress is prevailing. But you certainly know where, when things get really crazy in the United States, to look to Germany and see how they're doing. So look in, look out, look over when you need answers, right? Look over borders, look for what other countries are doing. And Germany is working very hard on itself to undo the things that it did, and was still living with those scars, and still some open wounds, as well as Cynthia's film House in Berlin would tell you. So I think for Americans, it's really great to look at Germany's history and current undertaking.
Yeah, facing history is a big thing. Britain has never done it, so they're in a complete mess, because they still think of themselves as these colonial imperialist kind of, this unbelievably arrogant elite classes in Britain. I mean, it's very depressing.
There we are. Right. And when we think of America's history that we have left improperly unattended, Jack is back. Other countries in the world also participated in the slave trade. And so, like Germany, the United States is focused on that particular issue. and it can choose to take the lead and be an example of making reparations and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
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 So there we are. Jack, welcome back. Just in time to say goodbye to Cynthia. Very quickly, Jack Rasmussen was #2 on the team and has been rocket fuel in getting Screen 360 TV to serve the pandemic. And so I'm glad the
Great.
two of you are meeting.
Right.
Kate
Yeah.
is
Nice to meet you.
Kate is going to tell her class about a project we have for little homework, which is Kate, with social media. What are
Yeah.
they going to do?
If you, Dana, Peyton, and Nina, and I'll post on Google Classroom for the others, if you could follow Screen 360 TV on Instagram and comment in the comment section underneath the most recent post. The most recent post should ask you what you learned today that you didn't know yesterday. And it can hopefully specifically apply to this discussion, but if you're racking your brain and it's too much to process too quickly, it can just apply to your overall day, okay? So make sure you do that before next class, and I'll post that on Google Classroom again, okay?
And we'll do, I think that's sufficient because we did film analysis for both. Peyton has a puppy.
Bring back the puppy. Yeah.
Peyton, come on, bring back the puppy. Thank you. Well, that's a great way to end with a puppy. Thank you.
Yeah, animals are really big, coming back into central focus on Instagram, and it's like in these hard times, like sometimes you just want to watch some whales and porpoises and puppies and
yeah, that's a really nice idea. Octopus Teacher is a really nice film. Have you seen that one, Cynthia? Octopus Teacher?
No, I think you mentioned it because if I have to,
I did. Yeah.
Write it down, otherwise I'll forget it again. Octopus Teacher, great.
And Cynthia, are you on Instagram?
Not really. I just sort of sometimes post things for my friends.
Okay. Well, we will see if you're there. Screen 360 TV is in, and the project that Kate just mentioned is part of our Socratic Seeds. We're asking questions out into the world and seeing what comes back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I might send you a link by this Kenyan authoress. She wrote a book called Dust. And she did the keynote address to a post-colonial shared history conference, and it's an amazing keynote address. It's it's a kind of Angela Davis kind of thing. It's very specific, and it's addressing the sort of curators and and most of the speakers were from Africa. It was a very, very interesting and illuminating thing. But I might just send you that, Katie, if you want to.
Please, yeah.
Post it, because she's great.
That's very good. Thank you. Will do. And please keep your ears and eyes open for Cynthia's film Heart of Light.
Well.
And also House in Berlin. And yes, and Cynthia, once again, we can, as our network is developing, and here with Sparta, we can show House in Berlin in chapters.
Okay.
We would, in the next semester, we'd have to think about that, but it would certainly give you feedback from the underside of 20, 20 years old, that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again. Thanks so much, ladies. Thank you so much for staying after, and I will see you on Wednesday. And actually, I'll see most of you on Wednesday.
Yes. Great. And
thanks to all of you. Okay.
Thank you, Cynthia. And things are rolling with your mother's bank account.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Just okay, everyone. Thank you. Anyone with if you need to stay on with Screen 360 TV, I'll be on for 10 minutes more, and need to chat with me, I'll stay
Okay.
on. But the
Bye,
rest of you,
America. Bye,
thank you.
Argentina.
Have a great Monday. Have a great Tuesday, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, everybody else stayed on. Okay, Mariella, I imagine it's a full day. How was that for you? Just a few minutes. Any feedback?
Wonderful. Yeah. Maybe, but that depends very much on the person who is invited. She was eager to talk a lot, and I noticed that maybe that might be intimidating for some students. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
it
you
would
know,
be.
they had prepared their questions, and I asked them to ask them, and Cynthia left time open. But yes, I mean, she's a knowledgeable person, so they have to feel, they have to know that it's for them, and so maybe I think you're right in how to, you know, the way we do that, and it's in the design ultimately of Screen 360 TV, is to have young hosts, two young hosts who are also hosting. So I was thinking about that actually. Is that
Good. So
the
they're
girls,
in charge. They have this
they're in charge,
responsibility. Yeah,
right? And
that
I'm
would be
not
nice.
there. Yeah, that they're the host, and so they have to be gracious hosts. And what does it mean to be a gracious host? Yes. So this is I'm thinking about in the future of developing these girls more and making them the hosts who will present the films themselves. Yeah, without that's a
That
good,
would be nice.
yep, that's a good note. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so as to make it more dynamic, because for us it's I could have kept on listening her for much more, but young audiences, they are not prepared to stay for so long. They get you know
a little
out of focus maybe. So
yeah, well, I thought we did what the best we could to prepare them to ask questions. So they made their questions and sent them to me, and I had them, and I was prompting them, but I wanted them to ask their questions. So how to yeah, maybe making them the host so that there is a natural flow too, rather than one question answer, two questions answer.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it was good that Cynthia said, I would have liked to have heard more from you.
Yeah.
That's good. Let's I did want to ask if she would come back again, and I know she would, but that's also a question that I should ask afterwards. I think we that she stayed on longer was really gracious.
I don't know really how Kate has worked with the students on the films, because that might also, depending on how they work afterwards, that might also help them, I don't know, feel more confident maybe to talk to the director.
Yeah. I thought it was nice that they responded, that they had just done the Recollector, and so that was fresh. So this is nice. That was nice to, and so that they I think we're really almost physically jogging their memories of with the process, with the film analysis afterwards, and then with the Recollector, and certainly with the conversation. We're really jogging their memories, and it's
good. And that was the best of it. I think that whenever they can make it more personal, they feel addressed in some way by the film. It's gonna work, and they will feel more eager to participate.
Yeah.
That's a key thing. Whenever
Yeah.
they can relate to it,
Mm. I think that was we're also seeing the the drag of online, the drag of COVID. And
Yeah,
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 sure.
that's right.
Yeah, sometimes the they might prefer other topics to deal with, but anyway, you never
Yeah,
know. You never know.
yeah, and
Sometimes you feel that they are not going to feel they it won't appeal, and it suddenly comes up that something there is something that they feel attached to, or
yeah, actually, when Cynthia became a little more political towards the end and said we don't have Trump anymore, they kind of lit up. So, maybe,
yeah, because they can relate to that.
yeah, they could have done that. Yeah, but otherwise it was
But anyway, that's a tricky area.
yeah.
I
No,
would,
it is a
I
tricky
would.
area, and I saw Rachel left after that. So, we
So
have,
we
and
have to be careful with political issues always.
right,
The same as
and
with religion, those topics,
right, and
which can be taboo, or
well, and I
depending on
think
the culture, we have to be careful
a lot of
for the
American
context.
high schools, public high schools especially, may even have rules
Mhm.
about that. So but
Yeah.
then again, we have the humanities here, and we're talking about all of that and how it feels individually.
Hmm.
So hopefully they talk to each other about that. And that's another thing I could say also. Have you asked each other about these questions, or do that now and send them? I could either send them into a breakout room, or they could ask them each other, like the Brady Bunch. And that's what I would imagine that they would do, was ask from tile to tile. And
Yeah.
so how to
That's why I'm
exercise.
asking that. I really don't know how Kate worked. Maybe they didn't even have too much time to work on this, but it would be nice if they could, have some discussions where they dug deeper into the
Uh-huh.
different topics in the film. So then when they come to this meeting, they sort of have some more insights to share that they would be eager to share, I think.
It's true. I think generally,
Maybe if they were, for example, if they were forced to write an essay on the movies, that would be, you know,
sure,
because they
the film analysis does ask them to do that. Have you looked at those yet?
okay.
The film
No,
analysis?
I haven't. I
I need to do
haven't. I
that. I
still
need to
have
give
to
you a
go over them. Have you sent them by are they in the folder, in one of the folders,
They
or
are, and I need to give,
remind me where they are, because I'm a bit lost with
yeah, I know.
some information.
I'll do that. Now I'll give a little tour, actually, and to things that
Okay.
to look at, and yeah, I'll do that. Um, so I think we're there. This was special to have the filmmaker on after seeing two of her films and not directly after the film. And
Hmm.
so encouraging the conversation between the two of them, and between the group, is also tile to tile conversation, we'll call it.
Hmm.
Tile to tile. Good.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to take some notes myself,
Okay.
reflect. I've taken, and we have this recording, which is great. And I'm going to go back to the IB conference after.
Good. And you
Yes.
tell me how it's going.
Oh, yeah. Actually, tomorrow is the first conference, or the keynote, I think.
Session. The
Yeah,
keynote.
and I think it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon European time. So, how could you do that? No, I'm wondering if, I mean, you could have my check-in, but the thing is, no, it's registered with my computer. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think you could use my code
No.
and do that. Yeah, probably not. I mean, we could try.
I don't know. If you want me to try, just send it to me. And
Yeah, I'll send IB link because how else can we actually? All right, we'll see. We'll see. I could ask, or we could apologize if something happens. But what's the rule? What's the rule? No, I won't do that. But I'll send it, and you can try to.
okay, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for your feedback and for being here this morning, this afternoon, this
Bye-bye.
evening. Okay. See you later.